Okay, good morning and welcome to the 9th Annual Laurentian Bank Securities Institutional Investor Technology Conference. I'm your moderator, Nick Agostino, Diversified Technology Analyst here at LBS. And over the course of the day, you'll meet my colleague, Salman Rana, who will also be assisting us today for these fireside and panel chats. For our first fireside presentation, I'm pleased to welcome from Germany, I might add, Gervais Jacques, the new CEO at 5NPlus, and joining him is Richard Perron, the company's CFO. Before we start the fireside chat, just a quick housekeeping item. Please ensure your microphone is set on mute and your camera is turned off during the session. Please ensure your name appears on the screen so we can properly address any questions you may have. If you have a question, please use the raise a hand feature or submit your question in the chat. We will get to it as soon as possible. Questions will be moderated by Jordan Simon, as well as handling any technical issues. And now let's get started. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome. Or I guess in your case, I would say good afternoon and welcome.
Thanks.
So first question, the global chip shortage has had an impact on key industries such as automotive, healthcare, IT, and manufacturing. How has this disruption impacted your customers and suppliers?
Well, thanks for the question. I think it's quite dynamic these days, but at this point in time, we don't observe a shortage per se for what we call specialty semiconductors. You know, we observe concerns from our clients to rely on Asia and South Asia for the supply of these very often, unique technologies aimed at applications that where silicon-based semiconductors are representing technical limitation. Then we're really in a specialized niche semiconductors. They want their future technology and associated supply chain to be much closer to them. Then this is what we are currently seeing on the market.
So we're not really associated with the current shortage per se, and in the field that we play, most of our customers are actually pretty proactive to do what Gervais just described. They're getting their supply chain shorter and much closer to them.
Yep.
Okay, which, as we all know, for silicon-based semiconductors, well, most of the facilities and the capabilities are in Asia and South Asia.
Okay, so when we look at 2021 sales performance and we look out to 2025, 2026, obviously there's a large TAM opportunity that's available to you guys following your Azure Space acquisition and the IP associated with it, specifically the wideband gap. How do you plan to fill the growth gap between now and 2025, 2026 to deliver a reasonable level of organic growth? And over this period, over the next 5 years, what is your internal, if you could share with us, your internal organic growth rate that you guys are targeting, and what segments do you guys envision or see driving that level of organic growth?
Well, I think if we start with semiconductor, we see specialty semiconductor growing beyond GDP, taking advantage of the various strategic themes like defense and green energy as well. I think that's something we can see, but also technology advancement currently observed under what we call medical imaging. And again, I think this shift is currently happening. And while performance material is likely to follow much closely the GDP, then you can see that we have semiconductor growing above GDP and performance material following closely the GDP. For either segments, our strategy will be to position 5NPlus as a unique partner to our clients in the Western world for ensuring their supply chain. To the point where you just mentioned, Richard, they want shorter supply chain and security of supply.
Yeah, and directly all of that is also relevant to explain the new segmentation that we introduced at the end. So we've renamed our electronic materials segment Specialty Semiconductors. And by default, we're bringing on board all of the Azure business into it. But we see to specialty semiconductors a great future and an internal growth or organic growth that is beyond GDP going forward. But that being said, most of you guys noticed that last year we did particularly well under our performance materials, which was the previous eco material technology. And we did pretty well for our health and pharma business out of it. But for that portion of our business, by default, we already have a pretty large share of the market. And under specialty semiconductors, I mean, we're going to be benefiting for a whole bunch of technology advancements. We're going to be playing various roles on over time.
Okay. So now, obviously, with Azure, as you guys digest that acquisition and try to build out the TAM potential, and I would add, I think it's about a 3-4 times TAM expansion relative to where you guys were at pre-Azure. But as you try to build out that TAM potential, are you still looking or active in the M&A market? Are you still building a pipeline in that regard? And if so, what does that look like? What segments of the market are you interested in? Should you pull that next pull trigger on that next M&A transaction?
Well, there's a various segment into that question. I would say, let's start with Azure. I think our short-term focus is definitely in optimizing Azure. You know, we're rolling out the potential of Azure. We are also in a very good cycle, as you know. I think the demand for satellite is, if you look at what is currently happening in the world, you see that more and more satellites are being launched and new constellation, and that for solar cells that we're producing, I think that is absolutely the good timing. Then first thing is optimizing Azure, which is a global leader in the development and manufacturing of these multi-junction solar cells, you know, what we call the 3-5 semiconductors. And we also have more than 120 patents. And that is something when you look at the two companies combined, that is it's unlocking a lot of potential. Then I think that the satellite industry is entering into a promising cycle, and both for the small satellites and also the larger satellites. And the various applications that they have been using the satellites, you know, you can see a long list of applications. And there are plenty of new projects to bid in Europe and North America these days. And this is one of the reasons we are in Germany today. Then in terms of Azure, I think the focus will be on that and also on wideband gap material. You know, when we acquired Azure, one of the reasons was also to develop the wideband gap material called gallium nitride on silica. And if we look at M&A, well, we have put in place a team dedicated in scouting the market for opportunities. And we are currently open to a wide range of sectors. Then I think we want to grow. We continue to looking at opportunity, and we're focused on developing the full potential of Azure.
Yeah, maybe just to add M&A, there's M&A for M&A, but with Azure, I mean, we're getting into a field space and satellites and all of that at a very promising time. And what you may see is could be partnerships also going forward. The whole industry expect a shortage or to reach capacity in terms of solar cells production. So more and more you see partnerships also with big players coming in a way.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And then Gervais, I remember when you came on board, you talked about a value pricing strategy, the idea of value over volume, which I thought was very intriguing, interesting. And I'm just wondering, as you guys try to execute that value pricing strategy, have you had any renegotiations of contracts or renewal of contracts with that new strategy in place? In other words, you're trying to push through some value pricing increases. Have you had those discussions with clients? Has there been any churn as a result of those discussions? Or are your clients accepting the value proposition that you're putting forward in front of them, and they're willing to accept not just inflationary pricing increases, but the value add proposition that you guys bring forward?
Well, value over volume continue to be our mantra, no doubt. And this is something that we're going to be we're going to be pushing really hard. We got some successes so far, but it's still part of the strategy, for commercial excellence within 5NPlus. But the short-term challenges that we're facing is we have lots of discussion with our various customers with the current context and the inflation. We have lots of discussion on pass-through and making sure that, at the critical time where we are, we need to stay in touch with our customers because the topic of inflation is on everyone's mouth. Then in parallel, we need to do both. I think it's making sure that we quickly adapting to the new reality, which is inflation that are, really high, and also bringing the value over volume discussion and working the development of our value proposition with our clients for the short, medium, and long term. And we're going to be moving more and more from clients to partnership, to think about R&D program, to think about new generation of products. I think that's the way to go for that type of application that we are leaders. We need to team with our customers because we do have what I call quality A customer, big names that are very sophisticated, and they understand that the value proposition we can bring.
Yeah, discussions with clients, as you can imagine, turn quickly under the topic of inflation and onshoring, as we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But value over volume is definitely something that we'll continue to pursue.
So it sounds like it's been somewhat well received, generally speaking.
Yeah.
So my next question is within medical imaging. Obviously, you guys had that large agreement with Samsung. So just wondering, how is that supplier agreement with Samsung shaping up? Is there any feedback you guys could share from that agreement? And more importantly, is there any follow-on opportunities that you guys have seen as a result of that Samsung agreement? I mean, I believe there's at least 4 or 5 other guys that you can, I guess, partner with in some shape or form. So just wondering if your phone is ringing on the back of that transaction.
It is an exciting time in terms of medical imaging. I think that's we can see the world shifting from the current technology, which is scintillators, to the PCD, photo content detecting. And Samsung, as you may know, they recently announced that they have successfully received FDA certification. It means that they are now collecting additional technical data in order to further demonstrate the capabilities of their new equipment before launching it through commercialization. Then it's quite a milestone, an important milestone that has been achieved when they got this FDA certification. It is also very important to mention that this old CT scan industry, there's many players out there, and we're connected to most, if not all of them. Then we have lots of discussion with all these people, and we're connecting at different places in the value chain, not all at the same place, depending on their needs.
Yeah. Going back to an earlier question about the organic growth, by default, medical imaging in time, because of that important switch in technology, as referred by Gervais, will benefit from that at a point in time, because today it's really the early stage of it, and we're going to be playing a role at adverse levels within that change in technology.
Okay, and then my next question, obviously, I think we have to touch upon Bismuth specifically. If I recall, you guys are the largest supplier in some shape or form in the world of the Bismuth metal, or at least you touch it the most compared to others in the industry. So according to Researcher, which is just an industry participant in the space, they're saying that the global Bismuth market is expected to witness considerable growth from increased demand from the automotive industry and the transportation sectors. So the question is, within your performance materials segment, are these demands being witnessed by the group? In other words, are you seeing more Bismuth demand specifically associated with the automotive and transportation industry?
Well, the short answer is yes, but I would say that automotive is one of the driver for these Bismuth sales, but health and pharma is really the main driver from a margin perspective. And as observed last year with our result, I think the performance material segment for which Bismuth made products are the vast majority of the product offering under that segment. we had a superb year last year. Then I think it's quite strong. And automotive is one of the opportunity, but health and pharma is really the main driver for business sales.
Yeah. The automotive industry probably brought the additional sales, but for us, 5NPlus, because again, remember the mantra of value over volume, it's our health and pharma business that got most of the benefit to the bottom line.
Okay. And then I guess sticking a little bit on the automotive and transportation theme, battery metals, obviously, you know, is very topical, and electric vehicles in general, lots of solid demand and rising demand at that. So we've seen recent examples of Tesla acquiring a company called Hybar, which is a battery manufacturer and sourcing of, and also sources nickel from Sudbury. Just wondering, what is your involvement in the battery market? How heavily involved are you in the battery market? And if not so much today, what is the prospects looking like for tomorrow?
Well, with all the things happening on the battery world, it's quite interesting. I think if you look at it from an opportunity standpoint, I think there's a lot of things that could be done. But for a company like 5N, we are very much solicited to play a role in developing or improving various battery material. But it is important for us to identify the proper entry point where we can really bring our value and where we can really make a difference. And making sure that we're using the best our capabilities, which could be technical, assets, scientific, and we can also make a link with what we're doing with wide band gap material, because in order to be efficient with these batteries, to transfer the energy from one source to another, we would need that type of material, which is gallium nitride and silica. And I think for 5N, this, I think, is really important. We want to play a role. When we bought Azure, that was one of the reasons we bought Azure. And now we are at the point to look at how can we unlock this value using this new material that we could propose on the market, and also looking at the battery space. And I would call it the electrification. Then not only battery, but all the electrification market.
Yeah, because electrification, it goes beyond electrification for electrification. The whole concept of efficiency also counts when you play with battery and with batteries. You want to make sure that they last as long as they can. They activate all the various motors inside your car. We also want them to be charged as rapidly as possible. So battery is one aspect of electrification. We're definitely solicited to play a role within battery for the materials of the battery, but currently our play short term is electrification through wide band gap materials.
And just to add on that, there was an article published, I think, not so long ago, about the need to be able to recharge a battery from 20% to 80% within less than 12 minutes. And it could be achieved using wide band gap material. Then the ultimate goal is, it should not take more time than fill out your your gasoline tank. Then this is where I think we could definitely bring value on that discussion.
Maybe just to add on all of that, because it goes to one of the initial questions you mentioned about semiconductor shortages. Currently, many of the semiconductors used around electrifications are silicon based, but they have their limitations in terms of frequency and heat dispersion. So they're slowly moving those semiconductors to those that are based on 2635 materials. And wide band gap materials, and more precisely gallium nitride, are slowly going to be replacing those that are made out of silicon in time to be more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So a role in battery materials, generally speaking, but it sounds like your bigger role is going to be in the whole electrification network or ecosystem.
But that's what I would say is the current spot we're in. But as we've mentioned, we're solicited to play a role on the materials themselves. Okay, which we need to identify the right entry point. But there's plenty of solicitation for us to play a role. Let's leave it there for a moment.
Yeah, I think we need to be where the value will. We're value driven.
Fair enough. So in the past, under the prior CEO, the company was talking about divesting the some of the assets of the company had catalytic and extractive segment, and I think the technical segment, if I recall correctly. And I'm just wondering, Gervais, as you now are in the seat for a few months and you review those files, what are your thoughts there in terms of, do you still plan to divest off in some shape or form those assets, or are you reevaluating them and maybe see a new fit for them going forward?
Well, now that Azure transaction is really behind us, and current change of leadership as well, I started 2 weeks ago as a permanent CEO. I think the whole team is currently back reassessing the viability of that sector within our group. Then this is something we are working on currently.
It definitely brings a lot of questions from a strategic perspective long term, but we're back to the assessment.
Yeah.
Okay. So no, I got you. No definitive answer. It's being reviewed. Maybe just two quick questions here. Just the wage inflation, labor scarcity, worker retention. Obviously, inflation is something that you guys are seeing. You're passing it through where you can on the pricing side. Can you just talk to, has that situation from an inflation perspective and from a worker perspective, is it getting better or the same or getting worse?
Well, if I look at the turnover we have in our various installation, and we're a global company, then we need to look at it locally. We do face different challenges, but we still have a low turnover. And I think in some countries, it's all up, they're talking more about work-life balance. In some others, I think let's say in Europe, people are working for the company almost for their whole career. Then we were in Lubeck yesterday, 2 days ago. And in Lubeck, most of the people, they started their career at Lubeck and they're still there. 28 years after, 20 years after, they're still there. Then I think it means that the value proposition that we're giving to them seems to be attractive because we're keeping our people. Then now we need also to think about development plan. I think it's not only it's not only the wages per se, it's what type of career opportunities could you offer to these people? Then you need to talk about training, work-life balance, promotion, maybe an international assignment, things like that, maybe short-term assignment as well. We need to make that attractive. So far, I think we've been good. Now we want to be very good. Then I think we really want to make that one of our priority to take care of our people, because at 5N, people are making the difference.
Yeah, what you're describing, that challenge has been around for years. Okay, I guess it's more in the news in Canada, but again, because we're in so many jurisdictions, it's been dealt differently. It's in each of the country. Europe is definitely not dealing with it the same way as North America is doing it. Asia, same thing. In Europe, they're looking at the whole offering. Okay, they need to be happy at their workplace, and it does not translate into wage inflation now, and in no way as what we can see there in Canada.
Fair enough. So I guess we got time for one last question. I think it's an appropriate question to close on. Now that you're going through the Azure transition, obviously we've got the CEO transition as well. Gervais, what do you feel, maybe is there an element of the story that is not being well understood in the marketplace by investors when you look at the fact that 5N continues to trade at a discount to the peers? Do you think that the market is missing something, or there's an element that you guys will be bringing forward and proving out to help close that gap?
Well, I think it's up to us to better communicate. And it's up to us also to simplify our business model, but also explain the attractive value proposition that we have at 5N and talk about the various potentials. I think we've been quite clear about semiconductor and performance material. Both segments are quite attractive. I think it's now up to us to come with concrete example, quick success story, and make it compelling for the people.
Yeah, we need to be better at communicating the teams that we're involved now, because we've made changes slowly over the last couple of years. Azure by default is giving us a push towards further integration within the specialty semiconductor field. It's bringing us the capabilities to develop and commercialize wide bandgap materials, and also definitely need to do a much better job at communicating. Maybe at a second level, because you're referring against comps and else. I mean, the markets that clients we serve, for most of them, if not all of them, they're outside of Canada. Okay, while for those others or comps, very often they're listed in a stock exchange where they also have clients. So I guess to some extent that may help that may help them to some extent, but definitely not the main factor. And this whole thing where we need to do a better job, I believe that for some investors, they still see us as a natural resources play. Well, that's definitely not what we are. I mean, we're an important player within the material technology industry. We have an incredible footprint. One of our many key assets that we have are our clients. I mean, if you go through our client list for all of the actors that we serve, they're all tier one players. I mean, we sell to Airbus, Procter & Gamble, First Solar, BASF, and a bunch of others that I can name. Okay, and maybe another reason, again, maybe not on the top of the list, but the diversification of the markets that we serve probably does not have also in our communication. So we'll do our best to improve all of that going forward. An investor that wants to understand 5NPlus today needs to spend a bit of his own time, needs to invest himself in order to understand the potential and the teams that we're playing in. So that will require from us a much better job going forward in terms of communication, and I guess simplification is one aspect to it. But I guess we'll have to be a lot more vocal about all of the big teams that we're in now. I mean, medical imaging, renewable energy, specialized semiconductors, the whole space industry that is going through an upward cycle, where the number of players that can actually support that industry are very small, and we're one of them, and so on and so forth. So I guess we'll have to be more vocal and be much better at communicating that in the near future.
But we are definitely committed to make it happen.
Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate the answers, and I look forward to the continued communication to the street. I think it's going to be very, very helpful. So we'll definitely leave the conversation here. Thank you. I thank you both for your time. I know you've got a busy schedule there in Germany, so appreciate you guys taking the time today. And we'll wrap it up. I want to thank all the attendees for joining this morning. And just a reminder that the next presentation will start in about at 8:50, and it'll be MDF Commerce. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.